I believe backing the police, in giving them the powers that they need. In particular, I want to encourage more stop and search.
Headline grabbing, vote winning, a Prime Minister talking tough.
And that's why we're putting another 20,000 police on the streets, investing in frontline policing.
But in Birmingham, a city which saw one of the sharpest increases in stabbings in the country last year, is it what those working at grassroots level want to hear? Simeon Moore is a former gang member. Sent to prison 6 times, he now works with young people to try and keep them out of crime.
I feel like this just kind of shows that the people that are running the country have no knowledge of these issues or how to deal with them. They're so far detached, it's unreal.
You know, for a lot of people, these policies are going to be very popular because they will think that clamping down on crime is a good idea.
I think it's really silly. I think those resources that they're using to clamp down on the crime need to go into the communities. The reality is, the reason why kids and young people are behaving and acting this way is because they're coming from very poor environmental conditions, leaving them vulnerable, mentally vulnerable, and this is where they are easily able to take on negative lifestyles.
But polling released today suggests getting tougher on crime is popular with voters. When asked if they approved or disapproved of police being given greater stop and search powers, 74% said they approved. And it's a policy that seems to have broad appeal. More than 90% of Conservative voters are in favour of more stop and search. But that popularity holds up at around 60% amongst Labour and Lib Dem voters. Interesting reading for a government with an eye on a possible autumn election. What do you think of these measures that are being announced by the government?
For bringing more police onto the streets, I think it's a really good thing, because as I said, the Conservative government predecessors to Boris at the moment took them off the streets, and now he wants to bring them back, which I think can only be a good thing. We do need more police on the street.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, there needs something a lot more forceful, I think, in place, especially with everything going on at the moment, because there's no deterrent really, and I just think something needs to be done, doesn't it, just to just a bit more serious with them really.
If it's used in areas where, you know, the rate of knife crime has dramatically increased, then I can understand, because then it prevents individuals from just concealing weapons. So I feel like that could play a big part in reducing, you know, knife crime rates. At the same time, you have officers that are not really trained on it, and then that just gives them a free pass to racially profile ethnic minorities. So it's a bit of it's a sticky one, to be honest.
Last year, 700 children and teenagers were the victims of knife crime in the West Midlands. In February, 3 teenage boys were stabbed to death in just 12 days. The area was then one of 7 selected for a government pilot to enhance stop and search powers in an effort to tackle violent crime. The area's police and crime commissioner says whatever the headlines, what's really needed is numbers on the ground.
To use those powers, to use the greater prison sentences and to use stop and search, you actually need police officers to carry it out. We've lost 2,000 in the West Midlands, we've lost 20,000 nationally. On the stop and search, we don't need any new powers. We've had the trial in this area of the new powers, and it's made very little difference.
Has anyone from the Home Office been in touch with you about whether the pilot was working?
Well, the Home Office or ministers haven't asked me whether the stop and search policy is working, and I'm not aware they've asked the force either. And what we would tell them is that these new powers actually are not necessary. So this is just a bit of window dressing, really.
With funding under pressure for the last 9 years, the criminal justice system will naturally welcome more resources, and the policies may well prove popular with voters. But those who know the system close up warn a hardening of policy and rhetoric could be counterproductive.
What I do know is that the police want to have a relationship with the black community. So I would say that the police need to be very mindful of how these powers are being used, because it's not going to be very helpful. When innocent kids are being stopped and searched and they're going home to their parents are not going to agree with it because, oh, every kid's having a knife. It's going to make the community less likely to go to the police if something happens. I believe these things, the police giving more these kind of powers could even cause riots, could even cause the next set of riots.
The new Prime Minister may be doubling down on crime and punishment, but is that really about tackling violence or winning votes?
I'm joined now by Matthew Ryder QC, former Deputy Mayor who headed up social mobility and community engagement, and I'm also joined by Conservative MP Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, the most senior Conservative on the Public Accounts Committee and the Treasurer of the 1922 Committee. I'll come to you shortly, but if I could start with you, Matthew Ryder, as a QC, I can't expect you have any problem with these announcements about sentencing guidelines being reviewed to ensure violent and sexual offenders are pushed away for longer.
You being serious?
I am.
Well, I do have a problem with them. I think over the last 10 years or so, successive Conservative governments have behaved as though they're functionally illiterate when it comes to criminal justice policy. And the reason I say that is if you look at something like the stop and search policy, there is no evidential foundation for this policy that they're rolling out as an idea of reducing violent crime. There is no causal relationship in any study between Section 60, suspicion of stop and search, and reducing violent crime. But they're rolling it out as if there is a relationship, and there isn't. It's damaging and it's dangerous. What's worse is that this Prime Minister should know that, because when he was Mayor of London, he boasts about how crime fell while he was the Mayor. But what he never mentions is that during that time, stop and search, particularly Section 60 stop and search, also fell dramatically.
I didn't ask you about stop and search, though. I asked you about longer sentences, which is what people are focusing on today.
I was asked to come on to speak about stop and search.
No, I'm not saying that's not a relevant point, but if I could just also get your take as a QC on longer sentences. That goes down very well with the public. People feel that they want to make sure the most violent offenders do go away for longer, and there was, of course, this concern that that isn't happening.
But you said to me I should have no problem with it. I also sit as a judge, a criminal judge. I do have a problem with it because there isn't an evidential basis for this. This is criminal justice policy being formulated and rolled out without evidential foundation. There is no evidential basis for suggesting that we don't have long enough sentences at the moment and we need to make sentences longer in order to deter people from crime.
But violent crime is up, so what would you do? If you don't think the evidence is either with stop and search rolling out or with longer sentences, what would you do? You had a stab at politics.
Emma, every single study shows that the way you reduce this is by going to the cause of it, by public health policy, by spending more on resources for the police. This isn't the police's fault. They've had their resources stripped away. You need to put more resources with the police. You need to put more resources, in particularly with communities.
We've had an announcement of more resources with the police, 20,000 more police officers.
Well, first of all, there's going to need to be a huge increase in recruitment. Most experts will say they'll never meet their target in recruitment because there's already wastage from the police.
Okay, but that
to
is
get 20,000 plus is almost an impossible task within the time. But if you ask me what you do need to do to reduce violent crime, there's a wealth of evidence out there. The Mayor of London's doing it, various other people are doing it. They are reducing violent crime or trying to do so by putting the resources into youth work.
The current mayor has a knife crime epidemic on his hands.
Which is why he's trying to resolve it. But you're asking me, what do you do?
That's what your answer is around public health and policing.
What you do is you go to those situations that have worked in the past. What you don't do is simply roll out, we're extending sentences and doing more stop and search. That isn't the answer.
Let's come back to those in just a moment. If I bring you into this, good evening. In the last 24 hours alone, your government has announced £2.6 billion worth of spend on prison places, prison security, rehabilitation. That doesn't include the £1.1 billion as the aforementioned hiring of 20,000 police officers. Where is this magic money tree growing from the Conservatives that suddenly just popped up?
Well, all these pledges will be carefully costed. They will be within our fiscal rules of debt reduction, and that was set out by the previous Chancellor, and these will conform to that.
Will be. Haven't been done so yet. They're just being announced on the hoof.
No, they have been carefully costed, and they are designed to reform our criminal justice system, as Matthew was saying.
So where's the money? They may have been carefully crafted. Where's it coming from?
Well, we will set this out in a budget in due course.
Do you not know?
Of course we know where it's coming from.
Could you enlighten the viewers of Newsnight?
Well, they will either come from reductions in expenditure elsewhere or from increases in taxation.
But you can't tell us yet.
Of course I can't, on this programme, announce what...
No, it's just we're getting a lot of new money and we like to know where it's from.
I can't, on this programme, announce what the budget will announce in terms of taxation, but they will be properly costed. They will conform to our fiscal rules on debt reduction.
Well, let's talk about evidence then, because we can look at some of that. Actually, since 2012, judges already have the powers in this country to hand out longer sentences to violent or sexual offenders. So why on earth is this review necessary?
So what we're going to do is have an intelligent approach to sentencing. Some crimes, violent crimes, sexual crime, may well get longer sentences. Other crimes may well get shorter sentences. And what the Prime Minister is particularly keen on is for some more minor crimes to have proper community sentences to keep people out of prisons altogether. But what the Prime Minister is about in these announcements...
But this isn't new, is it? That's what I'm trying to say. The rules have already been in place for judges to do this since 2012. This is just bluster to get headlines and get votes, isn't it?
These are a new approach to sentencing, so that some crimes will have longer sentences, other crimes, more minor crimes, will be kept out of prison altogether.
But we don't need a review. The rule is already there since 2012.
Yes,
We've seen on the charts that sentences have been getting longer and violent crime is still going up. It doesn't work based on the evidence, does it? Or are you not a government attached to facts?
Well, of course we're a government attached to facts, but some crimes, some prisoners need to be kept in prison longer. We need to look at the automatic remission for some crimes, where people are automatically allowed out after serving a certain amount of years.
This hasn't been about remission. Boris Johnson has spoken all day about needing to say that people feel that there are violent criminals going to jail for longer. The judges already have that power. It's not a new announcement, that's the point.
Of course it's about remission. It's about the sentencing guidelines as to how and when people can be released. The other part of these announcements are that we're going to provide more prisons, more prison places, more prison warders, so that people can actually in prison be rehabilitated and come out of prison, hopefully not committing crime the moment they come out of prison.
Is Boris Johnson going to complete this review before implementing any changes? Because he started a review of stop and search and it's already gone ahead, the pilot, without completing it.
We are in a hurry to reform the criminal justice system to make sure that our constituents can feel safer, so that our constituents, so the actual amount of crime reduces and our constituents can feel safer on the streets and in their homes in this country. And that is one of the biggest priorities of government.
How long will the review take?
The review will take as long as it needs to take to do the job. But we already know.
So you can't tell us where the money's coming from, and you can't tell us how long the review's going to take.
I can tell you the money will come within our fiscal rules. The review will be looked at very carefully, but we know what needs to be done so that we can make the criminal justice system work better.
Are you proud of this change of tack? He's distanced himself from the previous Conservative administration and moved from the compassionate Tories. We only had a Justice Secretary a few weeks ago saying, let's get rid of 6-month sentences, and now we have a Prime Minister saying, let's boost these sentences. I am absolutely proud of what he's doing, because there is nothing that a government has of higher priority than keeping our constituents safer on the streets and keeping the criminals, the violent criminals, off our streets. Thank you to both of you.